Welcome to This Explainer. I am so pumped you're hanging out with me today because we are diving right into one of the most astonishing, wild marketing disasters of the 20th century. We're going to break down exactly how a super simple corporate promo campaign in the Philippines snowballed into a literal, deadly national crisis. We'll track the timeline, look at the data, and figure out exactly where things went so wrong. 5. That staggering number? That is the amount of people who actually died over a simple soda bottle cap. It's incredibly tragic, and it really begs the question, right? How on earth does a beverage promotion lead to actual loss of life? Well, to understand the sheer scale of this disaster, we have to rewind to the very beginning.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the million peso promise.
So, back in 1992, this contest called Number Fever completely took the Philippines by storm. The premise? Super straightforward. But the prize? Absolutely astronomical. 1 million pesos. And to put that into perspective for you, for the average Filipino in 1992, 1 million pesos was genuinely life-changing wealth. We're talking instant financial freedom. It meant you never had to worry about money ever again. And that exact promise of incredible wealth is what fueled the absolute wildfire that followed. Here's how it worked. Every evening, the news would reveal a winning number, say 37. If you had a Pepsi bottle cap with that matching number underneath, boom, you won the million pesos. Because the prize was just so massive, half the country, literally 50% of the entire population, according to Pepsi's own estimates, was actively participating. Families were stockpiling hundreds of caps in their living rooms. People were out there literally digging through dumpsters, just praying to find that lucky cap. The whole country had officially caught number fever. Which brings us to Section 2, the 349 glitch. Now, because this contest was wildly popular, Pepsi made a fateful decision to extend it for an extra 5 weeks. And right there, that is the inciting incident where things went terribly wrong. The tension was building and building until this highly specific, crazy moment. On May 25th, 1992, at exactly 6 p.m., the evening news broadcast the latest winning number to the entire nation, and that number was 349. Instantly, hundreds of thousands of people erupted into wild celebrations. In their minds, they were suddenly rich. Their money worries were totally over. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive problem they were about to face. Throughout the contest, Pepsi had been relying on a computer program to seed exactly 2 winning caps into their bottling plants, keeping them strictly within their prize budget. But when they extended the contest, that program totally glitched out. You see, 349 had previously been a non-winning number, which meant the plants were just printing it freely. So instead of the intended 2 winning caps, there were actually over 600,000 caps printed with the number 349 circulating out there. It was so incredibly common, some folks actually had multiple.
So suddenly, you have hundreds of thousands of people who fully believe they are owed 1 million pesos. That very night, ecstatic crowds gripping their 349 caps rushed straight to the Pepsi factory. Things escalated so fast that the entire factory had to be shut down, with local police forced to stand guard outside. And inside, panicked Pepsi executives were locked in an emergency midnight crisis meeting, realizing they had messed up big time.
Moving on to Section 3, chaos in the streets. Pepsi was suddenly staring down the barrel of an impossible financial nightmare. I mean, honoring every single 349 cap would have cost the company tens of billions of dollars. They desperately needed a way out. So I pose this question to you. How did Pepsi try to fix this? How does a massive, multi-billion-dollar corporation walk back a mistake of this magnitude when half a country is convinced they just struck it rich? Well, their big solution was to blame the computer glitch. And instead of the 1 million pesos, Pepsi offered just 500 pesos for each winning cap as a sort of goodwill gesture. To put that in US dollars, that was only about $8. As you can imagine, the masses were absolutely furious. I mean, think about it. Pepsi's $8 offer represented just a tiny fraction, 0.05% of the original prize amount. 99.95% of the life-changing money they thought they had was just gone in a flash. Now, a few people did take the 500 pesos, but the vast majority completely refused. They didn't care about some computer error. Pepsi was a global giant, and the people demanded they honor the full prize amount. When Pepsi dug their heels in and refused to budge, the situation deteriorated rapidly. That widespread refusal of the $8 offer turned into violent protests and actual riots in the streets.
Furious 349 winners stormed Pepsi factories. It escalated to the unthinkable point where Molotov cocktails were literally being thrown through factory windows, and Pepsi delivery trucks were being actively bombed as they drove down the street. In the ensuing mayhem, dozens of people were injured, and incredibly tragically, 5 people lost their lives. That takes us right into Section 4, Coalition 349 Legal Battles. Following those immediate deadly riots, the furious mob transitioned into a more organized, strategic phase of resistance over the next year. The winners figured out they needed to fight Pepsi in the courts. This led to the formation of a massive group called Coalition 349, led by a local preacher named Del Fiero. And Del Fiero successfully rallied an astounding 80,000 angry individuals, all holding those 349 caps. Together, this giant coalition launched a monumental legal action, attempting to sue Pepsi for over $400 million. The chaos spilled well into 1993, and then a really wild twist entered the public discourse. Old newspaper headlines started circulating based on testimony from a police officer. Testimonies actually surfaced alleging that to damage Coalition 349's standing in court, Pepsi had hired mercenaries to infiltrate the groups, cause the riots, and even bomb their own trucks just to paint the coalition as terrorists. More claims popped up saying people were paid by Pepsi to cause mayhem. However, a Pepsi lawyer quickly and firmly denied all of these allegations entirely. Without definitive hard proof, that firm denial effectively put an end to that specific line of inquiry. Let's move to our final chapter and see how this builds. Section 5, the final verdict. So, how did this decades-long saga actually resolve? Well, the incredibly drawn-out legal aftermath stretched on for years. In 1993, Coalition 349 actually scored a massive victory when the court put out arrest warrants for 9 Pepsi executives. But unfortunately for those thousands of hopeful winners, that was kind of one of their only big wins. Over the following months, stretching out for over a decade, almost all of the civil suits and criminal complaints were just steadily tossed right out of court. Finally, in 2006, literally 14 years after the glitch, the court officially closed the book on all remaining cases. The ultimate ruling? They found that Pepsi had not been negligent in the number fever disaster. After tens of billions of dollars in threats, massive organized lawsuits, violent riots, and those tragic deaths, the sole penalty was astonishingly small. Pepsi ultimately only had to pay a single fine of 150,000 pesos. But, a legal verdict doesn't just erase the human reality. The cultural scars left behind by this event are profound and they are long-lasting. Many Filipinos who experienced the number fever disaster remain traumatized to this very day. In fact, among certain groups who lived through the riots and the shattered dreams of 1992, just mentioning the brand name Pepsi is still deeply frowned upon. When asked relatively recently for a response to the whole disaster, PepsiCo released this statement. These events took place almost 30 years ago, and none of the executives familiar with this program are at PepsiCo anymore. We deeply regret any pain and suffering our mistake caused the people of the Philippines. It's a pretty sobering reflection to wrap up this explainer. And it leaves us with a really provocative thought that I want you to take away today. When computer systems fail and global corporate budgets clash with the desperate hopes of everyday people, what is the true permanent human cost of a simple glitch? Thanks so much for exploring this fascinating and tragic piece of history with me.